There were tire marks in the driveway the next morning, faint, but fresh enough to tell me she left fast. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part was that I watched her from the upstairs window the night before, sobbing into the steering wheel of her car. I stood there, behind the curtain, frozen, clutching a half-empty mug of cold chamomile tea like it was going to explain what I was witnessing. I didn't go down. I didn't knock on the window. I didn't text. I just watched her fall apart and then pull herself together, just enough to leave me. I've never told anyone that part. Because if I'm being honest, if I strip away the ego and the pride and the rehearsed, I did everything I could, lines. I knew she wasn't crying because of a fight. We didn't fight that day, or the day before, or the day before that. In fact, we barely spoke anymore unless it was about groceries, bills, or which show we were fake watching on Netflix. She cried because of something she didn't want to feel, and she left because of someone she did want to feel. That someone wasn't me. When she came back later that night, around 3:06 a.m., to be exact, I was already on the couch, wide awake, pretending to sleep. I heard the door creak. I heard her heels clumsily hit the hardwood. I heard the long pause as she stood in the hallway, maybe deciding whether to check if I was awake or just crawl into bed and pretend nothing happened. She chose silence. And silence, I've learned, is the loudest betrayal of all. The next morning, I didn't say anything. Not because I wasn't boiling inside, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go to pretend nothing happened. And let me tell you, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance. She came down the stairs wearing that faded college hoodie, her hair tossed up like she'd just rolled out of bed, and she smiled at me like everything was fine. Like she hadn't walked back into our home reeking of perfume that wasn't hers. Like I didn't notice the faint red mark on her neck she tried to cover with her hair. "Morning," she said casually, as if she hadn't just come home 4 hours ago from God knows where, leaving me sitting on the couch with a 1,000-yard stare and every scenario playing in my head like a horror reel on repeat. I couldn't take it. I said nothing in return. I just sipped my coffee and nodded. She made eggs. Scrambled. Like always. Like clockwork. And that detail broke me more than I expected. She was cooking eggs while I was trying not to lose my mind. She was humming under her breath, that same damn song from the night she left, the one I'd later learn wasn't just a song, but a memory wrapped in melody, tied to someone else. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than a gut feeling, more than the ache in my chest or the way her eyes darted around the kitchen instead of meeting mine. I needed proof. Because I've made the mistake before, accusing someone I loved without evidence, and I swore I'd never be that version of myself again. So I played dumb. Nodded when she told me she might go out again this weekend. Smiled when she said she was meeting Laura for brunch. I even helped her pick out an outfit, like some pathetic husband clinging to the edge of a cliff while his wife stepped on his fingers on her way down. But every time she left the house after that night, I took notes. Times, locations, smells, mood shifts. The way she suddenly had a password on her phone when she used to toss it around face up without a care. And it wasn't long before the cracks turned into canyons. 3 days later, she forgot to close one of her apps. I picked up her phone off the charger to move it, just to move it, and the screen lit up with a paused video. It was muted, but it didn't need sound. It was her, in a dark booth, at some club I didn't recognize, laughing, her fingers tracing the wrist of a man who wasn't me. A man with a tattoo I didn't recognize, and a gold chain I would have mocked if I ever saw him in person. She looked alive in that video, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. I pressed play, and that's when I heard it, the song she hummed every morning. His voice was barely audible in the background, laughing and saying, "Told you this track would make you melt." I felt sick. I put the phone down exactly where I found it. I didn't say a word when she came home later. Didn't flinch when she kissed me on the cheek and said she was tired from Lara's drama. I just smiled, nodded again, and said, "You should get some rest." But that night, I started a new list, not of her behaviors, but of my next steps. Because now I had a name. And I was done being the guy who cried into the couch cushions while she danced under someone else's lights. The next morning, I waited until she left before I opened her phone again. I know how that sounds. I know what kind of person that makes me. But at that point, privacy felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when the ground under my marriage was already cracking open. And before you judge me, let me tell you, I didn't go looking for lies. I went looking for the truth she refused to say out loud. She had forgotten to close her apps again. And just like before, that same video was there, still paused. Same booth, same chain around his neck, same grin I wanted to rip off his face. But this time, I did something I hadn't done before. I clicked on his profile from the shared social feed it had been posted to. Not hers, his. I expected some random guy. A club promoter maybe. Someone from out of town who'd disappear back into his shallow nightlife bubble. But no, he wasn't a stranger. He was Bryce Matheson. And Bryce Matheson was someone I knew. Not closely, not well, but enough. We worked in the same district. He was the sales guy who always shook my hand too hard at conferences and made a big show out of driving his leased Mustang to every meeting. I'd seen him flirt with married women before. I just never imagined my wife would be one of them. I thought she saw through guys like him. I thought she was smarter than that. I thought we were smarter than this. My stomach turned. I started clicking deeper, through old photos, videos, captions. My jaw tightened with every post I uncovered. There was one from 3 weeks ago, geotagged at a rooftop bar Hallie told me was too loud when I suggested it for our anniversary. There she was, just out of frame. Her reflection caught in the window, hair tied back the same way she wore it that night. Same dress she said was in storage. I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion or a moment of weakness. This was a choice, a string of decisions, a slow-building betrayal that had been growing right in front of me while I cooked her dinner and rubbed her feet and waited up like a fool every time she said she needed space. My hands were shaking, but I kept digging. I found a private folder in her cloud, buried under layers of fake vacation albums and innocent photos of sunsets. Inside, screenshots of late-night messages. One from him said, "He doesn't deserve you. You know that, right?" Another, "Soon, okay? Just a little longer." But the one that hit the hardest? A selfie of the two of them in bed, her cheek pressed against his shoulder, both of them smiling like this was their story, not mine. Like I was the background character to their romance. I stared at that photo for a long time. Long enough to forget I hadn't blinked. Long enough that my throat started to tighten and my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, break something, call her, text him, do something, but I didn't. Instead, I saved everything. Quietly, methodically. I uploaded the photos, the messages, the videos, all of it, to a hidden drive. And then I deleted the evidence from her phone and placed it back exactly where I'd found it, screened down on her nightstand, just like she always did. Because now I wasn't just a heartbroken husband. I was a man with a plan. And no matter how much it hurt, I wasn't going to confront her in anger. No more begging. No more pathetic pleas to talk it out. This time, I was going to wait. Wait for the perfect moment. Wait until she thought she'd truly gotten away with it. Wait until the lie was so big it would collapse under its own weight, with me holding the final string. And when that moment came, she'd never see it coming. 3 days after I found the photos, she kissed me on the neck while I was doing dishes and whispered, "I love you." It should have made me melt. It used to. But now, all I could think about was whose bed she'd said that in last. Whose skin she touched before pretending to come back to mine. Whose cologne was probably still lingering in her car the last time she told me she was running errands. I froze mid-rinse. The dish slipped out of my hands and clattered into the sink, and I made up some excuse about being tired. She didn't press. That was the new pattern now. We didn't ask each other real questions anymore. We performed the play, the marriage theater. She had her lines, and I had mine, and we were both terrible actors trying not to break character. But that kiss, that whisper, that was her making sure I was still in the dark, still loyal, still hers, even if she wasn't mine anymore. She didn't know I'd already made my move. Earlier that morning, I paid a visit to someone she'd never expect, Bryce's wife. Yeah, Bryce had a wife. Her name was Cassidy, and she deserved a lot better than a guy who was sneaking around in booth corners and rooftop bars while she was home watching their dog and planning their IVF appointment. I hadn't told Hallie I knew. I hadn't even told Cassidy everything, just enough to plant a seed. I'd reached out anonymously at first, through a burner account, sending Cassidy a message with a photo of Bryce's arm wrapped around my wife's waist. No caption, no details. Just the photo. The reaction came quick. Cassidy responded with a single word, "When?" I met her at a cafe the next day, told her everything I had. We compared timelines. Bryce and Hallie were even more reckless than I thought. overlapping work events, yoga weekends, and those random Thursday nights Hallie said she needed solo time. Cassidy was composed. Too composed. That kind of calm only comes from people who are about to set something on fire. I want to catch them together, she said, sipping her espresso like she was discussing the weather. I asked her why. Because people like them don't learn unless it costs them something, she said. And I wanted to cost everything. So we made a pact. She would bait Bryce. I would bait Hallie. We'd give them space to dig their own graves. And when the time was right, we'd hold up the mirror. But that night, as Hallie crawled into bed next to me like nothing had changed, I almost cracked. I could feel her breathing softly beside me, her legs brushing against mine under the blanket. She whispered, "You've been so distant lately. Are we okay?" I swallowed hard. I wanted to turn over and scream at her. I wanted to shout the names, the places, the lies she thought she had buried so deep. But instead, I said, yeah, just tired. Because the trap was already set, and I needed her to keep believing I was still the fool. Let her say I love you. Let her kiss my shoulder. Let her laugh at my jokes and plan our weekend like she hadn't ripped our vows to shreds behind my back. It was all part of the countdown now. And when it hit 0, everything she built with her lies would come crashing down, all at once. She said she had a spa appointment that Saturday. Facial and massage. A full reset, she called it, even tossed in a little fake laugh to make it feel casual. I helped her zip up the back of her hoodie like I hadn't seen the confirmation email for a hotel suite booked under her name. I even handed her her sunglasses, the ones she wore when she didn't want to make eye contact with anyone who might recognize her. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "I might be late. Don't wait up." That was at 3:14 p.m. By 3:42, I was already parked across from the Havenwood Inn. Engine off, hat low, camera ready. I didn't have to wait long. At 3:58, Bryce's Mustang pulled up. Cassidy had told me his schedule. He was meeting a client that afternoon. Right. The only thing he was about to close was the hotel room door behind my wife. I watched him step out like he owned the street, sunglasses on, phone in hand, not a care in the world. And then, Hallie appeared. She came out of the side entrance of the building, not the main one, wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair tied back. Low effort. The don't look at me look. But they didn't hug, didn't kiss, not in public. She glanced over her shoulder before they both slipped into the building through the private entry that led straight to the elevators. That was all I needed. I recorded it, all of it. Not to post, not to humiliate, but because I knew Hallie. She was the kind of person who could lie through anything if there wasn't hard proof. I wanted something I could look her in the eyes with. Something undeniable. Something that would turn her silence into a scream. I texted Cassidy immediately. One word. They're here. She was already 5 minutes away. I don't know how to explain what came next. The waiting. The quiet. The realization that the worst part wasn't that she cheated. It was that she was so comfortable doing it. Like it was routine. Like it wasn't something that would shatter the man who made her coffee every morning and watched her fall asleep for years, memorizing every freckle on her shoulder like it meant something. When Cassidy showed up, she didn't storm in. No rage. No meltdown. She just nodded to me, took her phone out, and walked through the lobby like she owned the place. The plan was simple. She'd go to the front desk, say she left something in her husband's room, use the name on the booking, and ask for a key replacement. She'd used that trick before. The staff bought it. She texted me one last time from the elevator. It's time. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. And then I got a video. It started with Cassidy opening the door. And then it captured the look on both of their faces when she walked in and calmly said, "Don't stop on my account." Hallie's eyes blew wide. Bryce looked like a deer in headlights. Cassidy, ice cold. I watched the video 5 times before I realized I was shaking. I should have felt triumphant. I should have smiled. But I didn't. Because when you finally catch the person you love at their lowest, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a funeral. And I hadn't even buried the worst part yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. That part was already numb. But because I didn't know what version of her would walk through the door when she came back. If she came back. I sat in the kitchen, lights low, staring at the front door like it might confess something before she even opened it. But hours passed. The sun began to rise. Birds chirped. And still, nothing. At 7:02 a.m., I finally got a text. Just 5 words. Staying at Lara's. Need space. No apology. No explanation. Not even a good lie. She didn't know what I knew. She thought I was still in the dark. That she could spin another convenient version of reality, and I'd buy it like I always had. But this time, I had the footage. I had the timeline. I had Cassidy, and we were done playing fair. At 9:30, Cassidy and I met up again, this time in her car just outside her house. She was calm, eerily calm, like her whole nervous system had shut down after the detonation. She handed me a small black pouch. "I found this in their hotel room," she said flatly. Inside were two things, a silver bracelet with Hallie's initials on it, and a folded note Bryce had apparently written to Cassidy, but never gave her. I opened it. It was handwritten, rushed, rambling. He said things like, "It just happened," and "You and I haven't felt real in years," and the classic, "Please don't tell anyone. Especially not HR." HR. Turns out Bryce wasn't just a reckless cheat. He was stupid, too. Cassidy worked in the same company, and Bryce was high enough on the food chain that an internal scandal wouldn't just be embarrassing. It'd be career-ending. And Hallie? Her name was in the note. He called her my Clarity. That word broke something in me. Clarity? That's what she was to him. After everything we built? After every stupid argument I tried to fix, every date night I planned, every time I sat across from her and felt like I was losing her one breath at a time. She was off playing muse for some arrogant sales guy with a borrowed car and a superiority complex? I didn't respond to her text. Not that day. Not the next. Instead, I started unraveling the life we built. Quietly. Carefully. I logged into our joint accounts and began moving my half. I called my lawyer friend and told him everything. No drama, just facts. I listed my name off the lease of the apartment we'd moved into 2 years ago, the one she insisted had more light and space for growth. I scheduled a pickup for my things through a moving company. No notes, no confrontation. Just gone. And then, on the fourth night of silence, I left her a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside it were printed photos, a USB drive, a copy of the hotel invoice, the screenshot of the note with my Clarity underlined in red, and one sticky note on top, written in the same handwriting I used to leave her love notes with. "This is the space you asked for. I'm finally giving it to you." I don't know how she reacted. I wasn't there when she walked in and saw it. I didn't stay to listen to her footsteps or her sobs or her fake explanations. I didn't want them. I didn't need them. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one begging. I was the one walking away. And the silence I left behind wasn't a punishment. It was freedom. The day I left, I turned my phone off for the first time in years. Not airplane mode. Not silent. I powered it down completely. And I didn't touch it again for 2 full days. When I finally turned it back on, it nearly exploded with notifications. 37 missed calls from Hallie. 17 texts. 3 voicemails. One of them was over 2 minutes long. She didn't cry in it. That was the part that struck me. She sounded angry, offended, even. Like I was the one who had broken something. Like I owed her an explanation. I didn't listen to the others. Instead, I opened the text thread. The first message said, "Darren, what is this?" The second was, "I need to talk to you. Please. This isn't what you think." That was followed by, "Are you seriously just leaving?" And eventually, "You're being immature." But then the tone shifted. By message 15, it was, "I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far." And finally, the last one, sent at 3:12 a.m. the night before, "Please don't hate me. You were always the one." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt everything. Rage, hurt, resentment, but above all, relief. I was finally on the other side of a lie I had lived inside for far too long. Cassidy texted me too. Her message was short and to the point. HR is involved. Bryce is suspended pending investigation. It's over. That was it. No celebration. No gloating. Just closure. Cold and clean. I had moved into a small one-bedroom by then. Nothing fancy. Just quiet. Just mine. It smelled like paint and new carpet and not her perfume. I'd brought only the things that mattered. Old journals, my guitar, 2 framed photos that didn't include her. Everything else I left behind. The first night alone, I sat on the floor eating takeout and staring at the wall. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't loneliness. It was peace. The kind I hadn't felt in a long, long time. But peace doesn't last forever. 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was her. Hallie stood there like a ghost. makeup-free, hair messy, wrapped in that worn-out hoodie I once loved. She looked small, shaky, but I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let her talk. She started with the usual. It didn't mean anything, and I didn't know how to stop, and I felt invisible. I let her go on for a while, watching her unravel, arms waving, voice cracking, eyes darting to see if I was reacting, but I wasn't, because I had already lived through the worst parts. This was just the echo. She finally stopped and said, "Don't you have anything to say?" I stood up, walked to my desk, and handed her the same USB drive I'd left in the envelope. "This is everything," I said. "Everything you said. Everything you did. Everything I watched. I don't need an apology. I just need you to understand that I was there the whole time, and you never once saw me." She didn't cry. She just nodded. And then she left. No begging. No screaming. No second chances. Just a door closing softly behind the life we used to have. It's been 11 months since that door closed. 11 months since I stood in that doorway, watching the woman I thought I'd grow old with disappear into silence. And I'll be honest with you, I thought the pain would last longer. I really did. The first few weeks were rough. I'd walk into rooms and expect her to be there. I'd reach for my phone during lunch to text her some pointless thought, and then remember. I'd dream about her, too. Not in the way I expected. Not with anger, but with grief. Like I was mourning someone who had already died, but kept showing up in my sleep. But something unexpected happened in all that stillness. I started finding pieces of myself I didn't even realize she had taken. I went back to painting. Just small stuff at first. Old rooftops, alleyways, reflections in puddles. Things that made me feel something again. I stopped apologizing for being sensitive. Stopped questioning my instincts. Stopped begging for love that came with terms and expiration dates. I didn't date for a long time. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to drag my broken pieces into someone else's world. I wanted to be whole before I let anyone in again. And then one morning, in the least dramatic way possible, I met someone. Her name's Elise. She's a writer who spilled her coffee on me at the bookstore, cursed louder than most people do in public, then laughed so hard about it that half the cafe turned to look. We ended up talking for 2 hours that day, and neither of us bought the books we came in for. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tiptoe around my past. She asked questions. She listened. She showed up. It's different with her. Easier. Lighter. She knows I've been hurt. She's been hurt too. We don't pretend we're perfect, but we're honest. And that honesty feels better than any fake fairy tale I used to chase with Hallie. As for Hallie, I haven't heard from her in over 6 months. Cassidy told me she moved cities. Got a job somewhere else. I don't know if she ended up with Bryce or someone else entirely, and I don't really care. That chapter is closed. The ink is dry. And me? I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I don't need revenge or closure anymore. What I needed, and finally got, was clarity. Real clarity. The kind you earn, not borrow from someone else's shoulder. If you're reading this and you're in the middle of that storm, if someone you love is lying to your face while smiling like nothing's wrong, I promise you, peace is coming. Maybe not quickly, maybe not loudly, but it will come. And when it does, you'll breathe again. You'll laugh again. You'll love again. And one day, like me, you'll wake up next to someone who didn't break you. Someone who chooses you every single day. And that's a sunrise worth waiting for.